in Bedford, Indiana, in a quiet ravine, away from the sounds of traffic, people, and the busy trappings of society, is a lonely monument. It's an exotic-looking tomb, one that could have been created in ancient times, a fitting tribute to one of the most amazing men to ever live in Lawrence County, or in fact, the world. It's the tomb of Dr. Winthrop Alvin Foote. He was the very essence of a Renaissance man, classically educated, curious, enterprising, eccentric, and to many, more than a little mysterious. He developed two Indiana cities, Palestine along the White River, and Bedford. It's said that he also named the town of Avoca from the Thomas More poem entitled The Vale of Avoca. Dr. Foote healed the sick and afflicted with what often seemed like magical medicine. And after that, he opened the first limestone quarry in Indiana, the infamous Blue Hole. He took ancient stone from the earth to create monuments and buildings. He began a Lawrence County industry that survives to this day, nearly 200 years later. But who was this stranger from the east that seemingly came from thin air? Dr. Winthrop Alvin Foote was a very complex person. To fully understand him, you have to go back to a very dark event, one that would deeply impact him for the rest of his life. He was born at Newtown, Connecticut, November 30th, 1787. He was the 10th of 14 children born to Edward and Anne Foote, whom were British colonists. The United States was only 4 years old at the time. The Treaty of Paris officially ended the Revolutionary War September 3rd, 1783, and there was a renewed sense of optimism in the air. The sky was the limit without British rule. Winthrop idolized his older brother Ziba, whom was extremely intelligent and had decided to take advantage of all these opportunities through getting an education. Also born at Newtown, Connecticut, July 4th, 1783, Ziba could both read and do math at 7 years old, remembered everything, and had a voracious appetite to learn more. His father was a mechanic by trade, a handyman, and although the family was poor, bought Ziba books as he could, realizing his son's exceptional intelligence. It was a good investment. Ziba even read to and taught his younger brother Winthrop. At just 16 years old, Ziba was teaching at Newtown's local school, in Sandy Hook, White Plains, New York, and Reading, Connecticut, all the while saving for college and all the books he could afford. By the time he arrived at Yale, he was able to test out of most of the curriculum, amazingly starting as a senior and graduating in only 1 year. Ziba graduated from Yale in 1805 and was ready to find his fortune. He was eager to start a family, having fallen in love with a Miss Sadie Hunt. Sadie was a beautiful and intelligent young woman in her own right, talked with Ziba for hours, and they wrote frequent letters to one another. By all indications, she was his perfect mate. Ziba promised her that once he had made some money, he'd come back, and they'd marry. Ziba's good friend, David Sanford, told him about an exciting opportunity in the Northwest Territory. It would involve creating surveys of the vast, uncharted frontier. Ziba was excited about all the adventure and potential money it would bring and joined him. Much of the Indiana wilderness was covered with wetlands, marshes, standing water, and filled with mosquitoes and disease. It was a perfect place to easily get malaria and typhoid fever. David Sanford caught a fever, and despite Ziba's help, died soon after. Ziba also caught a fever and nearly died from it. Once recovered, he traveled west with 2 other men. He ended up over 900 miles from home, in the dark, uncharted wilderness of Indiana. On Wednesday, April 30th, 1806, Ziba and his 2 companions tried to survey a pond in present-day Gibson County. As Ziba crossed, he lost his footing. He was pulled to the bottom by his heavy surveyor's equipment. His 2 companions desperately tried to save him, pulling him above the water and again losing him. After 2 hours of trying, they pulled his lifeless body from the pond, ending what should have been a long and prosperous life ahead. Ziba Foote was buried above the pond's bank at a solemn place, wrapped in a crude coffin made of hickory tree bark. The area was thereafter known as Foote's Grave Pond, and still is to this very day. Ziba's death devastated his hopeful parents, the girl he loved back home that had hoped to marry him, and above all, his brother, Winthrop Foote. Winthrop vowed that someday he would come to Indiana, retrieve his brother's body, and provide him a proper burial, one commensurate with the honor he deserved. Ziba's death would haunt Winthrop in very dark and hidden ways, even unto his own grave. Winthrop followed in his brother's footsteps, pursuing an education to escape poverty. He studied both law and medicine at an Ivy League school, Columbia University. He took specialized medical training at the College of Physicians and Surgeons. He then interned at New York Hospital and received a medical certificate in February of 1818. Upon graduation, he could have established a successful law or medical practice in the biggest city in America, becoming wealthy having a lavish home, and living in New York's upper-class society. He instead chose to travel west 845 miles to a little town named Palestine, Indiana, and an uncertain future. Dr. Foote banded together with 2 other doctors and traveled westward on horseback to Indiana. Along the way, they treated any sick people they found in the frontier settlements, like miraculous angels riding in from thin air. By October 1818, they had reached the Ohio River and took a boat down to Louisville and continued on horseback. One doctor settled at Salem, the second at Bloomington, and Dr. Foote at Palestine. Dr. Foote used his horse for house calls and frequently traveled up to 70 miles to see a patient. He became Lawrence County's first doctor and later acquired the official title of county physician, charging $1 per visit, medicine extra. He was known to be an excellent doctor who truly cared for his patients. In fact, he even swam across the East Fork of the White River on many occasions when he received word that someone was sick on the other side. Understandably, he gained many loyal patients and friends, but also a reputation for being eccentric. In 1819, Dr. Foote was admitted to the Indiana bar and later became the county's prosecuting attorney. Without a doubt, Palestine certainly needed him. It was a pretty rowdy frontier town, compounded by having 2 saloons. It even required a 2-story log cabin jail. But having a jail, a sheriff, a judge, and a prosecuting attorney provided some semblance of order. But deep inside Dr. Foote was anything but order. It was a brewing, hidden darkness that defied everything people saw on the outside. By 1820, having settled into life at Palestine, Winthrop decided it was time. He took a keelboat west along the White River and then south along the Wabash, passing Mount Carmel, Illinois. He traveled over 100 miles to Gibson County, Indiana, as far as the boat would take him. With the assistance of a local man named John Waller, the men went into the thick Indiana wilderness to search for his brother Ziba. After 14 years, Ziba had been reduced to only bones and a few remnants of clothing. It was a surreal moment. The last time Winthrop had seen his brother was at the Newark, New Jersey bridge, all the way on the East Coast. He never dreamed that it would be the last time he'd see his brother alive, his smiling face, or feel his kind, brotherly embrace. Winthrop said, "Little did I think that I would be compelled to find his last remains in this far-off wilderness." The men who accompanied Dr. Foote put Ziba's remains in a sack for the boat ride back to Palestine. It was the first and only river voyage that Winthrop would take with his brother. Winthrop buried Ziba on top of Palestine's knoll in a proper but small metallic coffin. A promise was made, and a promise was kept. But Ziba Foote's story and its impact on Winthrop was far from over.